start with you, if you don't mind, with like the most basic questions possible about what is going on in Canada right now.
Sure.
One of the things we are hearing now is the media here is saying, in fact, these aren't even truckers. These aren't even truckers at all. It's not even a Canadian trucker protest. There's a few trucks. It's not even a trucker protest. Is that accurate?
Yes and no. So it started as a trucker protest, but it has grown, just like it started against the vaccine mandates for all cross-border long-haul truck drivers to be fully vaccinated. It started out over that, but it's grown into much more. So yeah, there are truckers that are involved, but there's also just a lot of people who are fed up with COVID who are saying, okay, well, I'm going to attach myself to this. And that's kind of what's happened. It's grown both in who's involved and why they started it.
Okay. We got reports here that these truckers were going around to neighborhoods at all hours of the night, laying on their horns in the middle of the night to keep people awake. Is that true?
In some neighborhoods of Ottawa. So, Ottawa is the capital city. It's got all the beautiful Parliament buildings, and that's what you're going to see in any promotional video or news coverage. And, in most of the news coverage, that's what you see. But it's not dissimilar to Washington, D.C. I remember, despite having lived in Ottawa for years, my first time being in Washington, D.C., and you're walking along the mall, and you got all the beautiful buildings and the big things, and you turn a corner, and you're in a neighborhood. There's somebody's house. It's the same sort of thing. So while most of the protest was focused around Parliament Hill, there were so many people, so many vehicles, big rigs, pickup trucks, regular cars, that they were into neighborhoods as well. And yeah, some of them were laying on their air horns all day and night, keeping people awake. Of course, we've still got a lot of people working from home. So even if it's during the day, how do you work with an air horn outside your window?
Sure.
I'm in downtown Toronto with construction going on outside my window, and that's distracting enough.
Okay, so it was happening. Is it still going on?
So a couple things happened. There were negotiations with some of the organizers to say, why don't you stop this? And they realized it wasn't helping their cause. So there was a bit of a pullback, and then some people weren't following that. There was an attempt by a private citizen to get a court injunction because the city and their police force utterly failed in this. So did the Trudeau government. But a private citizen went to court, got a court injunction that said, between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., you can't be laying on the air horns, and you can't be doing it all the time. Okay. That's a fair compromise, I'd say. Yeah. But it took a private citizen doing that.
Interesting. Okay, how about the stopping of commerce? We've seen that the blockade, at least at one point, was stopping all traffic over this bridge. That's been talked about a lot in the U.S. as this is a real motivation for a crackdown on these guys, and also that maybe a lot of these people were Americans who had nothing to do with this Canadian protest and are just jumping in. How much of that is true?
I think so. We found out, somebody hacked the Give, Send, Go platform that the protest was using, and we found out that more than half of the donations came from Americans to that particular platform, but it wasn't more than half the money. So, you take away from that is Americans are cheap and Canadians were giving more money. Take from it what you will. So there are a lot of Americans donating to it. I think the participation of Americans in the actual protest is being overplayed a bit. That's being used by the Trudeau government for some of the actions they're taking, see, foreign interference, which they love when it's Barack Obama endorsing Justin Trudeau in the middle of our election. Then they love it. But they don't like it in this particular case. So as far as the bridge, to give you a sense, it's at least $500 million that flows across the Canada-U.S. border across that bridge on a daily basis. That's $500 million U.S., by the way. Wow. And these are figures from the U.S. Department of Commerce. So $500 million a day in two-way trade. There's another bridge just north of Detroit, where it's even more. So the Ambassador Bridge connecting Windsor and Detroit is 27% of all our trade and about $500 million a day. The Blue Water Bridge north of that is 36% of all trade. And that was just being slowed down, but trucks were waiting 2 and 3 hours instead of 5 minutes, which is what they would normally be getting. 5-10 minutes on a bad day, 20. Now it's up to 2, 3, 4 hours of waiting. It was impacting commerce in the Great Lakes region tremendously.
It's interesting because I think, I see this with protests all the time, and I never understand it. There was a protest in Houston years ago, which was the Waste Management Union, and they decided to go to the busiest intersection in Houston and dump trash all over the road. And it got them in the papers. People were talking about it, but everyone was angry about it. No one appreciated it, and it wound up turning the people sort of against the protests. Are we seeing signs of that in Canada?
Yeah, there was more support. I'm not going to say there was ever, majority support for this protest, but there was more support, or who cares? It's just Ottawa. Ottawa's the capital city. It's where politicians are. It's like hating Washington, D.C. People across the country love to hate on the city with all the politicians. So they didn't care that much, or, they were already political partisans on one side or another. But then you start blocking the bridge, and you start blocking out in Alberta. I believe it's between Alberta and Montana and Manitoba and North Dakota. They're blocking bridges roadways that carry livestock. Massive, $75 million a day at one, almost $50 million a day at the other, and a lot of it livestock. And that's being blocked. And people start going, oh, wait a minute. Either I'm out of a job at the auto plant, or my cousin who works in the meat plant or at the ranch can't work anymore. Now you're pissing me off. And that started to turn sentiment against the protest, and now they're very definitely in a minority situation in terms of public sentiment. They may agree that we got to drop all these COVID measures, but now they're annoyed because people are losing their jobs over this protest.
Okay, and so the other thing we're getting a lot here in America is, first of all, are they still blocking this bridge? I had heard that was getting cleared up, and also
that cleared away on Sunday. Yeah.
Okay, so that is all cleared up, and then the other two were that there's been violence associated with these protests, and a lot of them are Nazis or white supremacists or alt-righters. Is there any evidence of this?
So. On the first Saturday, so we're going back almost 3 weeks now, somebody showed up to the protest on Parliament Hill with the classic swastika Nazi flag. And I never saw a single picture of them getting close to Parliament Hill. I won't bore the viewers with all the geographical details, but they were not near it. They were quite far away, and it looks like people told them, okay, get on your bike, out of here, we don't want you. There were people showing up with Confederate flags, which in this day and age, I'm sorry, that's dumb. That's,
not going to help.
I don't care what your view of the Confederate flag is. That's going to cause problems for you and kill off your message. So even if you think it's a good idea, which I don't, it's going to kill off your message. That only happened on the first Saturday. The descriptions in our media, much like in yours, of what is far right, alt right, sometimes it's anything more conservative than Mao, So
yeah.
I always take it with a grain of salt. Are there some racists in there? Yeah, there's one guy who goes around making all kinds of crazy comments on Facebook. He does live streams. He's an absolute racist. He was up on stage dancing and making speeches the other day. That shouldn't be happening. As somebody said, if you've got a table full of people, one's a Nazi, but everyone else is sitting listening to them, well, soon it's a whole table of Nazis, because how do you tell them apart? Every political movement has to practice good political hygiene, and you don't let people who are outright racists talking about the white race being replaced, and we got to get rid of these people and get rid of those people. You don't let them at your rally. You don't let them at your political event. You shove them out and distance yourself from them as much as possible. And that hasn't happened here. So are all the people involved in this racist or Nazis? Absolutely not. Are there dangerous elements that are latching onto this? Absolutely yes. There were weapons seized at the Coutts, Alberta border crossing. And even the police said this was a new group that had recently showed up and attached themselves to the protest that had been there for almost 3 weeks. And they were arrested quickly by police. They had a stash of handguns, long guns, body armor, machetes. When you've got that going on at a peaceful protest, it's no longer a peaceful protest. That has to be taken down. The day after those arrests, the people blockading that border crossing said, you know what? We've made our point. We're going home. We don't want any more trouble. We don't want to be associated with this sort of thing.
So it seems like some of these claims have a germ of truth here and there, but have been overblown by our media, which of course is nothing different than I would expect. So tell me about the emergency powers that Trudeau is pushing through here. I mean, from an American perspective, and I know you know a lot about American history and our culture here, Brian. We've talked about it many times over the years. And it sounds pretty scary. It seems like, this is a pretty big move to clamp down on this. And I don't know if the justification is there for it fully.
I don't know that the justification is there for it. Is allowed by law? Yeah, and this is a law that's been on the books since 1988. But it's never been used.
Right.
In some ways, it's not dissimilar to what a governor might use in a state of emergency, being able to take command and control of things. But it does go further than that. Now, the New York Times falsely stated that all civil liberties in Canada have been suspended. That's not true. Tucker Carlson on Fox declared this was martial law. That's not true either. People are exaggerating claims. I had one person send me an internet news website that claimed social media has been shut down in Canada. Well, that was news to me because I broke a story on Twitter today, and I know you retweeted it. And, it's been seen by close to 2 million people. So either Twitter's lying to me on how many people have seen this, or, this claim is false.
I'm not sure how I retweeted it if your social media was down.
You saw it in Texas? Well, then I guess Twitter is working here in the Canadas.
Yeah.
Look, it gives tremendous overreach. They've gone after the funding of this group, and they went after Give, Send, Go. They went after GoFundMe. Now they're saying they're using the emergency powers to bring Bitcoin and any Bitcoin transactions under what's called our FinTrack system. That's our financial tracking system. You guys have something similar, and it's to track, money laundering by organized crime or to track terrorism financing. We've all watched Ozark, where they have the guys go in smurfing, where they're only drawing out $9,990 because anything above $10,000 triggers an investigation. Now they're extending that to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's been around and been a player for many years. They never used regular legislation to do this. Now they're using the emergency one. They're using it to go after people's bank accounts if they're funding the protest in any way, and that includes personal bank accounts. Definitely there are problems with that, and with any emergency measure, the devil's in the details. They had to do something. Did they have to go this far? Probably not, but that's Justin Trudeau's reaction to a lot of things. Show up a day late and $1 short, and then overreact and act like you're saving the place. Before this, his main interaction with this protest was to call them racist, misogynist, small fringe minority with unacceptable views, to try and really ramp up the situation. He started being called out by people in his own party for playing wedge politics, for being divisive, for making things worse. And it was only then that he started saying, okay, let's try and talk responsibly, but immediately go to these emergency powers, which, it looks like if they are judicious in using them, we're fine. If they're not, then we're in big trouble. Either way, we've given the government a tremendous amount of power. And what's amazing is we've got people who were for years calling for governments not to have this much oversight over us, police departments to be defunded. Now they just want everybody's head smashed in and everyone arrested and all their money seized.
It's amazing. We're running a little late here. You got to give me 1 minute, though, before we go on the police chief in Ottawa resigning. What is the story here?
He didn't do anything for almost 3 weeks. Now, this is a guy who was hired because he was an advocate of progressive policing. And the people in Ottawa, the liberal elites that run the city, decided, hey, this is great. This is exactly what we need. And then they got a taste of it and they decided, oh, crap, we don't like that. So
it's usually how it happens, I've noticed.
There's been a revolt. Well, yeah, we want to defund the police. We don't want them in our neighborhoods. Don't do this, don't do that. Wait a minute. There's people doing things we don't like. Send in the big scary men. Oh, that's not what you do? We're going to have to talk. So yeah, he resigned. It was obvious he either had to resign or be pushed out or let somebody else take over because things were not going. And what's interesting is that the liberal establishment had a story. So I broke the story that he was resigning, but the liberal establishment moments later obviously had a story ready to go, packed with all these anonymous sources denouncing this man for being a bully and a tyrant, which is the worst thing you can call a progressive. And that was ready to go the moment it broke that he had resigned. So there was obviously a push to get rid of him by the very people who were once his champions.
Brian Lilley broke this story in Canada, and you got to check out his social media, which still exists apparently. He's a columnist for the Toronto Sun. Be sure to follow him on at Brian Lilley on Twitter. Brian, thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Stu.
If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe to our channel so you'll be sure to see similar videos from BlazeTV with the added bonus of signaling YouTube that your voice and opinion still matters. And if you're looking for more great conservative content, check out one of the 2 videos suggested here.